What's up, guys? Eli here, back for another CD collection video. More or less picking up where we left off last time. I got a little bit off track, so I'm having to backtrack just a little bit alphabetically. But here we go. I promised a more metal video this time, and that's mostly true. Not all metal here, but some cool stuff regardless. We're still in the G's, kind of the beginning, early part of the G's, so we're going to start off with The Gathering. Much loved Dutch metal band. I used to actually have more of their shit, but I think I lost an album or two of theirs some years back. I don't remember what happened to them. But, so the earliest one I have still is Nightfall Birds. Arguably their best album. A lot of people think that. I'm not really sure where I stand at this point. It is. I'm not a huge Gathering fan. I do like this album. I do think it's very good. This came out on Century Media Records, by the way, back in '97. I don't know if I showed the back. I think most of you are probably familiar with The Gathering, but if you're not, so they're a Dutch band. Like I said, came out. They started in the early '90s. They started off as actually a kind of, would you say gothic-y, maybe? Kind of a gothic-ish doom death band. They were one of the earlier bands that kind of did that thing where they had a death metal growler and a female vocalist, and just kind of trading vocal spots. They were one of the earlier bands to do that. They would only keep that up for an album or two. I don't really remember, and then they would lose the death metal vocalist. They would just stick with the female singer. What's her name? Annika. I don't remember her last name. Let's just call her Annika. And on the topic of that, she is amazing. She is an absolute treasure in any music scene, any box you want to try and put her in. She is an absolutely stunning vocalist. She has such power behind her vocals. She's amazing on a technical level, but not only that, she brimming with personality. Honestly, I would honestly call her one of the best, regardless of genre, one of the best singers the world has ever seen. I know that's putting her up on quite a high pedestal, but she is just truly amazing. So Nightfall Birds is a very melodic album. Like I said, by this time they'd already shed any death metal elements they still had. And this is just more of a, what would you call this? More of a heavy metal album, but not in a traditional sense. It doesn't sound like Iron Maiden. It doesn't sound like Judas Priest. It doesn't sound like any of that. It's more progressive leaning. Maybe some melodic doom elements. Rockin' riffs. Lots of energy here. It's just a very good album. Melodic as hell, but still heavy enough to make it's still heavy enough to call it metal for sure. But hard one to pin down for me, anyways. My limited vocabulary. The next album is even more hard to pin down. This is kind of a later album. So Annika, is it Van Giersberg? Anyway, she would leave at one point. I don't remember if it was shortly after this album or what, but this is from 2006. The End Records. We have Home. A lot of the Gathering diehards do like this album quite a bit, actually. I like it. I haven't listened to this in probably over a decade, so I can't really say anything too provocative about it. It is a different beast. This does not sound a lot like their early stuff. This is more of an atmospheric and definitely a less metal album. This is more of like an atmospheric rock, but I mean that in the best way. A lot of layers and a lot of depth to this music. Very intelligent, but it's kind of all I can really say. I definitely should probably give this a few more listens. It's probably been over 10 years. Remember liking it, and I don't think it's an album that I ever listened to a lot. I've had it for probably since 2006. I've only listened to it like maybe twice. So I'd actually love to play that again soon if I have the time. Next, we got a couple bands from Classic Norwegian black metal band Gehenna. Now, I don't have any of the cool. I mean, I do think these albums are good, the ones I have, but they're a little bit later. I don't have the really cool fucking early stuff when they were doing like symphonic black metal. I have the albums when they kind of started to change in their, kind of shift in their sound a little bit. This is from '98, so I'm missing quite a few of the early albums. And I do prefer those early albums, but I do actually really like these kind of mid-period Gehenna albums. This is Adamaron Black. Came out in, like I said, '98 on Moonfog Productions. So you get that classic Moonfog, late '90s artwork style that they had that, for me, is, what would you call it? I have nostalgia for it, but I don't think, as art, I don't think it's aged very well, but whatever. I mean, look at the layout. It's kind of ugly, but I love Moonfog shit. I love collecting it. So anyways, at this point, Gehenna started adding, they were kind of adding death metal into their sound. And they would kind of add more and more, and they would almost, at one point, almost lose the black metal. They would almost become just a death metal band. In fact, they might have, at one point, like in the earlier 2000s. It's been a long time since I've heard those, but still enough black metal in here to call it black metal. But they were, definitely a heavy dose of death metal. Real good for what it is. Same thing with these next few. I might even like this one a little more than that one. This came out in, I think, 2000. And we got Murder. More of that weird, kind of dated Moonfog artwork. Yeah, definitely more, this might even have a little bit more death metal from what I remember in there. Still black metal, though. Their roots, this band was rooted firmly in black metal. So, I mean, I kind of take back what I said a minute ago. I don't know if they ever shed all the black metal elements, because that's just really what this band was made of. But they did add a lot of death metal, and at one point it might have came pretty close. This album I like as well. I might like this one more than those last two, actually. We got WW, which I think stands for World War, but I'm not really sure. This is definitely a war-themed album. This one's kind of weird. This came out on Moonfog and Art Music Group. I think this is like a Russian press. It says on the back, for sale in Russia, CIS, and Baltic states only. I never actually noticed that. I bought this used years ago. That's just some random record store. So I think it's like a Russian pressing. But this album, super violent. I think they're kind of going for that, thing Marduk were doing. This came out in 2005, by the way. When Marduk were doing their war-themed black metal, well, they still are. I think these guys kind of took a page out of Marduk's playbook. War-themed, a little bit more of a violent sound. I mean, those last two I showed, quite violent albums as well, but I think this one is even more just crushing and just kind of trying to obliterate everything in its path. And maybe a little bit more, I think they might have actually shed some of those death metal elements for this one. Still death metal elements in there, but I think this is more of a kind of a Marduk-esque black metal band or album. But again, it's been a long time since I've heard this as well. But it's an album I do quite like, because I'm a big Marduk fan, so I think that probably is part of the reason why I just really latched onto it. Next, we have an absolute classic death grind band. This is their debut EP, although this is a repressing from Relapse Records, but we got General Surgery, Necrology, classic EP. Early gore grind stuff. If you're a big Carcass fan, you absolutely already have this. I have no doubts about that. But if you're a big Carcass fan and you've never heard this, I haven't heard a lot of their later stuff. They put out other albums, but I think it seemed like they always kind of had some pretty big gaps in the time period. But Yeah, this is their debut EP. When did this fucker come out, by the way? Early 90s. I wish it said. I don't know why it doesn't. And I'm gonna guess 90 or 91. Let me know if I'm correct. So yeah, this band was from Norway. Oh shit, was it Norway or no, Sweden? Sweden. You have Maddie Karki from fucking Dismember on this album, which I'll be honest, I didn't remember that. I haven't heard this in years. I listened to a lot of Dismember in my late teens, early 20s. But I'm also a big Carcass fan, so I've always gravitated towards this one. Yeah, just early gore grind, clearly inspired, by Carcass. I think these guys were literally just trying to be Carcass, which there's nothing wrong with that. Some of the most gross, pitch shifted vocals you've ever heard to this day. Like I said, very pitch shifted, very a lot of effects on there. I wouldn't say it really sounds like the Maddie from Dismember, which is okay because I mean, yeah, this is just a nasty death metal album with elements of early gore grind, an absolute classic. This digipack aside, this is a pretty cool repressing. It's got a whole bunch of bonus tracks, which I'm not really a bonus track guy, but I don't know. It was still cool to hear. Yeah, I wish I had more of their stuff. I want to say there was a pretty big gap in between that. I don't think it was ever like a full-time band, so I think it was years before they put out something else, and I just don't have any of it. So the next 3 albums I have here are George Carlin albums. I don't know if I have any stand-up comedy fans watching, but I am a massive George Carlin fan. Wish I had gotten to see him live. I wish I had gotten to meet him before he died. But anyways, his comedy albums will still, he will kind of always live on with me at least. So this album is called Parental Advisory Explicit Lyrics. Came out in 1990. Now, George Carlin had been a comedian since the 70s. So at this point, he'd probably already been a comedian for close to 20 years. I personally think that Carlin got way better with age. His early stuff is good. He was always kind of pushing the envelope in stand-up comedy. But I mean, he would just get more angry and more ruthless as he got older, and this album is definitely a prime example of that. But I also have some of his older stuff. This is a later one as well. This is from '96. Back in Town. Fantastic album. Just Carlin being the vicious, brutal comedian that he was. It's got his famous bit about why he doesn't vote on here, which is stuff of legend. This might be my favorite Carlin album, actually. But other than that, I have an older one here. I like his older stuff. Plenty of good shit on here. I just don't like it as much as his 90s stuff. But this is a Place for My Stuff. Came out in 81. I wasn't even alive yet. I was born in 82, but yeah. There's some great stuff on here. I just prefer his later stuff a lot more. And last but not least, we have the only Ghoul album that I have. And I actually really like this album. I always kind of avoided this band. For what reason, I'm not really sure. But I thought this album was absolutely kick-ass. I think this is the last album they did. I mean, they're still active. I think this is their most recent album from 2016. We got Dungeon Bastards. This is just a really fun, really well-done thrash album. I know that some of their early stuff had elements of like, death metal and grindcore and stuff, and there is some death metal elements here too, but it's just more of a pure thrash album. Been a couple years since I listened. I don't think there are any like grind elements here. Correct me if I'm wrong though. So this came out on Tank Crimes Records, and this was pretty cool. I showed the inside. Um, kind of funny how the booklet actually folds out into a board game, which I've never played, but I don't know. Maybe someday I will. Really, really cool idea, though. But, yeah. Anyways, any Ghoul fans? Since I'm not necessarily a massive Ghoul fan, where would you guys kind of place this in their discography? I know, just from what I've read over the years, this one was pretty well received, but it seems like most of the diehard Ghoul fans definitely prefer the earlier stuff. I've heard some of that stuff, and I kind of like this better. Just because it's a really good thrash album, and I don't, not to be a fucking downer, but I just don't think that there's a lot of good thrash coming out these days, so I really appreciate this for what it is. Anyways, that's all I got. Comic for the day is just this random comic I bought, I don't know, maybe a few years ago. Haven't read it. I don't have any of the rest of the series. So I have issue 2. Probably why I never bothered to read it. And I bought it strictly for the Ben Temple-Smith, beautiful Ben Temple-Smith artwork. It came out on Black Mask, which is not even a comic label that I'm familiar with. I don't think I've ever even taken this out of its sleeve, so we'll be looking at this for the first time together. A special moment. Okay, Temple-Smith artwork on the inside as well, which is always appreciated. Created and written by Matt Pizzolo. I'm not sure if I'm familiar with Matt Pizzolo, but okay, so Black Mask Studios, and it's got Brett Gurewitz. Isn't that the guy from Bad Religion? Brett Gurewitz. Very cool if it is. Matt Pizzolo and Steve Niles. As I've said before here, I'm a big Steve Niles fan. He is an absolute treasure in the comic world. And a hell of a nice guy, too. I met him once. So this came out in 2014. So is anyone here familiar with Black Mask Studios? The Temple-Smith artwork is amazing, as it always is. And this looks very dark, very edgy. Yeah, I'd really love to get at least the first issue and then maybe a couple more that I can get into. But, wow. Yeah. Pretty cool stuff. Anyways, most of you aren't even watching at this point, so I should probably wrap this up. Yeah, anyone familiar with Black Mask Studios or God Killer in general? Talk to me about it. Talk to me about any of the music and shit that I just showed. Any George Carlin fans out there? Anyways, that's all I got for now. I'm going to take off, but thanks for stopping by. We will talk soon, guys. Cheers. Louis says hello and goodbye. There he is.